Hey there, and welcome to another Adventures of Blink. I am, of course, Blink, and you can find me on GitHub with the handle you see right here. Please make sure you like and subscribe to this video if you'd like more content. I'm always looking to grow my audience here, and I'd love to hear from you, so give me some feedback as well. But today's adventure, I thought I'd start with a little bit of a confession. Here it comes. I don't really like JavaScript. Now, I know, you're probably already unsubscribing. It was like, I just clicked the button and now you want me to unsubscribe. What's wrong with this guy? You see, I started off as a C++ and Java guy, and so it's always bothered me that in order to build a web app with Java, I had to learn JavaScript and HTML and go build a UI in a completely different language from what I had chosen to work in. Can't I just do it all in one place? So I want you to try to imagine my delight when I discovered Vaadin. Vaadin, if you're not familiar with it, is an open source Java framework that allows you to write web applications that run in your browser without writing any HTML or JavaScript. You call Java components and it builds your web page for you. You might be thinking, I don't know, that sounds a little complicated. Well, let me tell you, it's anything but that. I thought today that I'd share with you a quick build I was able to do. Having never touched Vaadin before, this was my first time ever trying to build with it. And it took me about an hour to do the UI part. We'll, of course, do it much faster than that today, but I wanted you to know how short that learning curve was. So let's see if we can go on ahead and get started here. I'm going to shift us to coding view. So you'll see here, I've kind of dropped you into the middle of a project. I used a sample app that you can download straight from the Vaadin website. It's part of their onboarding package that there's this to-do list application. And it's very simple. It's got a text box and you type in what you'd like to put on your to-do list and press a button. And it adds it to a running list of text labels that have a checkbox next to them so that you can check off your list. But I didn't want to build with that. I wanted to just kind of strip all that part out and start fresh with the Vaadin framework behind me in order to make something completely different. I like the offbeat things, what can I say? So today we're going to actually build a tic-tac-toe game. We're not going to go through the tic-tac-toe logic. I've already done that part and set it aside. But what we're going to do is build the user interface. So to catch you up on where we are, you can see over here I've got a models folder. And in the models folder, I have three classes. So I have a game.java, I have a gameboard.java, and I have a gametile.java. So the tiles represent the different squares where you can put an X or an O in the tic-tac-toe game. And then 9 of those squares assembled together makes a game board. And then I, of course, have logic there to figure out what it means to play on the board and how things work there. And then I have the game, which sort of provides the logical structure of there are 2 players and they take turns and things like that. And it, of course, has like the game over mechanism where you can see what happens when somebody wins the game or when it ends in a draw. All of those things are handled there. So we'll take a look here in the Java or in the game.java class. You can see yeah, it's a fairly simple app. I didn't put a whole lot of time into this part either. It was tic-tac-toe is a pretty simple game to code up if you've ever tried it. So in order to play the game, you have player 1 is X, player 2 is O. You build a new game board. You say it's player 1's turn. And then you have methods that can play a space. So whatever the current turn is, it's accepting the input and saying, well, it's player 1's turn, so this will be player 1's space. And then it cycles everything. You can see it switches the turn. And that's how you actually play the game. But of course, there's no place to actually do these things. These are all just methods that you would have to call in a certain place in order to make that happen. So If you want to dig into the tic-tac-toe thing, let me know in the comments or something. We can do a separate video where we walk through how to build the logic for a game like that. It would be a fun little video. I guess I could probably do that at some point. Anyway, suffice to say, I know that the game works. It just needs a way to provide the inputs from a friendly interface. So where we're going to do all of our work is in the main view class. So main view is represented here. So in the Vaadin framework, you establish an application, and then the application calls the different views that are available. And you can see this one actually still has the my to do in here from the original Vaadin tutorial. I didn't change any of that stuff. I just took out the parts on the main view class so that I could replace it with my inputs. So the first thing you can see in here is this route call. What does route do? Well, route establishes the URL path for this view. So for instance, if I wanted it to be available at tic-tac-toe, I could just type that in. And now anybody who puts in, or actually you don't do the leading slash on those, sorry. Anybody who wants to use this would go to localhost :8080, which spins up the application, /tic-tac-toe. If you leave the route empty, like it is here, that actually means just put this in the root of the application. So the root, localhost :8080 will take you directly to this view. So this is your default view, if you will. Okay. So in order to build the main view class, you can see it already extends vertical layout. A vertical layout in Vaadin is simply a construct that allows you to put the components in vertical order. So if you want things to be stacked on top of each other that way, there is a horizontal layout which stacks them sideways so that you can start to lay things out in sort of a grid pattern. And we'll actually get to see a little bit of that as we build this out. But to get started, everything that we're doing is built around a fundamental vertical layout class. So the first thing I'm going to do is hook up my game system. So I want to pull in the game class and instantiate a new game. And then I'm going to create another object here because I want to have text on the screen that says whose turn it is. So I do a new h3. You'll notice that this object, this is a Vaadin object that's provided this h3. h3 should ring a bell if you've done anything in HTML. You know that the h3 tag gives you a certain header size. So we're setting the text size for this text object that's just going to display. Click a button to play an X. And that's just going to be the text that I put in there for now. It'll actually get changed throughout the course of the thing. That's why I'm putting it out here as sort of a variable that's available to the entire class. So I'm going to need a constructor. And in order to do the main view, I need to first declare a new vertical layout. And I'm going to call it button board. So the button board is going to call a method that I'm going to create in this class just to kind of help organize the code a little bit. I didn't want to have too much mess in the constructor directly. It's probably not worth doing that in the long run. I don't know. Like people get into holy wars and things about how they organize their code. I chose to do it this way just to keep things a little more succinct as I go through this first part. And then in order to tell Vaadin to start building the components, what I do is an add. And for add, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start with new h1 this time. I want to put the title on the screen. So tic-tac-toe. And then I want to do a turn, which is the h3 that we declared up here. I'm going to display that next, and then I'm going to display the button board. So a little bit of background here to make sure that you're following along. So just to take a moment here to review what we've built. we've created the constructor for this main view, and we've declared a copy of the game so that we have the game logic available to us. We've also got a couple of things that we're doing for display purposes. Our H1 title at the top of the page, followed by an H3 turn variable here that says, click a button to play an X at this point. And then we have the button board, which we haven't actually declared yet, but we're going to build that actually right now. We're going to go on ahead and start into that. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make a private method that returns a vertical layout, and I'm going to call it create button board. Okay, and it doesn't take any parameters, so we can get started right away. Now, in order to do this, remember that a button board requires 9 things on it, 9 buttons, in order to create a tic-tac-toe board. So it's 3 by 3. I'm just doing standard tic-tac-toe, no fancy variations today. But I'm going to call for a Vaadin button array, and I'm just going to call it buttons equals new button, and it needs to be 9 elements long. Now, the next thing I have to do is declare each of those buttons individually, because remember, when you declare an object array, it doesn't instantiate every object within the array. It only creates the array and sets the sizes and says this is how big the array will be, but you actually have to individually instantiate every button in the button array. So I'm going to do a for loop, and I'm going to do int x equals 0, x is less than 9, x plus plus. Now, for each one of these buttons that comes up, I want to do a new button. And so the Vaadin button component is being called here to build it out. But we're going to do some other things with it here to get it started. So you could theoretically just have a button there, but it won't actually do anything at that point. So the next thing we want to do with button sub x is to set, I didn't want to equal, I wanted to do set ID, and we're going to get the string value of x. So if this is button 0, then we want to put the string 0 in the ID. We're going to store that for later, because that's actually how we reference which button in this array we're using when things happen along the way here. Let's talk about that actually right now, because we're going to build out a click listener. So if you've ever done event-driven programming in Java, you're familiar with the concept of listeners. Listeners are methods that are attached to objects that are designed to interact with your mouse. So in this case, it's a click. There could be other kinds of listeners, of course, as well. But in this case, we're only talking about listeners. And I'm going to do this just as an inline function today. So here is my function for the click listener. I'm going to say event.getSource, which gives me the object that caused the event to be clicked. So this is button sub x, but I don't know that it's sub x because x isn't actually in scope right now. But what I need to do is set text for this, whichever button I'm on, because it was just clicked. I'm going to go get from the game object whose turn it is. And that's going to get stored in the button text. So on the screen, if you imagine the button being there, when you click it, it's going to make the text on the button into whatever character is for the current turn. The next thing we're going to do is game.play, because we have to tell the game to go run through the state machine logic and address that our game is going to be in the right state afterward. So here I have to actually parse that string version from the ID back out into an int. It's a little clunky. I should probably think through a cleaner way to do this if I were going to make this a more robust application. But for the moment, this is actually something that works. So we'll just do it. Let's see. And then we're going to do that. That's going to go get the object that caused the event to be clicked. It's going to get the ID from that object, which remember we set right up here to be the index of which button it is. So I have a 9-button array, and now I know that button number 2 or 3 or 7 was clicked. This is how I get that number passed into the listener to be able to operate on it. And by virtue of passing it into the listener, I can also send it straight into the game object in order to make things happen. So now I know that I'm telling the game to play, the current play is at whatever ID, of the button that was just clicked. Now that I've played, the next thing I want to do is set my text. And so I'm going to change the turn, the H3 from earlier. Remember, click a button to play an X. Now I'm going to make it say click a button to play N, and then I'm going to add in game dot whose turn it is. And so now that I know that, the next thing I want to do is make it so they can't play in this position again. So I'm going to do event.getSource, and then I'm going to do set enabled. And I don't know why it defaulted to that. Thank you, autocomplete, for trying to be helpful, but we're going to move on. And we're just going to set it to false. So now, every time that you click a button, you can no longer play that button in this game. Like, you get one chance to play in that square. So no overwriting somebody else's space. Now, the next thing that has to happen is I have to figure out what to do if the game is over. So if game dot is game over, then I'm going to, the first thing I want to do is make sure they can't click any other buttons, because this should effectively end the game. So for int y equals 0, y less than 9, y plus plus, we are going to do buttons sub y dot set enabled to false. Actually, I think that's all I need there. Yeah, that's the only thing in that for loop. So then I'm going to check to see who won the game, if anybody did. So there are 3 states. I could have a X won the game, I could have an O won the game, or we could have used up all the spaces and it's a draw. So if game.whowon equals X, or game.whowon equals Y. Sorry, not Y, O. Get used to writing variables and you go X, Y, and then you actually try to use X's and O's for tic-tac-toe and get confused. Let's see. So there's that. Now, if a person has won the game, so if one of the players won the game, I'm going to fire a Vaadin notification. And I'll do this with notification.show. And then I'll do game is over. So here's the message that I'm putting out to them. And then I'm going to add in game.whowon. And we'll continue the message here. Wins. Refresh the screen to play again. All right. Now, if that was not true, and I don't know why you decided to autocomplete me there. All right. Now, the notification should have a different message if it was not won by one of the players. So now we're going to do notification show, and we do game is over, outcome is a draw. Refresh the screen to play again. Okay. And that takes care of everything we needed inside of the event listener. So remember that we have been, oh, I need a semicolon there. So we have been inside of this click listener for all of this code. The idea here is once I click, here's all the things that have to happen. So one of the cool things about tic-tac-toe is you only have 9 click listeners to write, or in this case, you can do it in a loop. So after I've done that, the next thing I want to grab, I come to, I think, here, and I'm going to do a horizontal layout. I'm going to call it row 1, because the other thing I have to do in here is define where those buttons get placed on the screen. So I'm going to create a horizontal layout for each row, and I'm going to insert 3 of the buttons on each row, and then I'm going to stack them up. So let's take a look at how this works. We're going to do new horizontal layout, and what we do here is we grab the buttons that we want. And you could probably make this more efficient, but it's readable to do it this way. And as much as I like efficiency, I do prefer the ability to read what's happening. So I'm going to put a 2 in there and there. Then I'm going to go in there. And so now I've created the first row. And I'm going to copy paste this because it's literally all the same things except I change a couple of names. So I'm going to come here to row 2, and in row 2 we're going to have 3, 4, and 5, and then 6, 7, 8, and I'll change this to row 3. Okay, so just to make sure you're following along, I now have 3 rows of buttons for my tic-tac-toe game. And in the first row I have out of my array 0, 1, and 2. In the second row I have 3, 4, and 5. And in the third row, I have 6, 7, and 8. And so that's how I know that they're all in the right place. Now, the very last thing I have to do, because remember, the purpose of this function was to return a vertical layout. So the next thing I'm going to do is drop right in here, and I'm going to say return new vertical layout. And for this vertical layout, what's inside it? Well, it's going to have row 1, and row 2, and row 3. And so that has now created 9 buttons. Oh, need semicolon. It's created the 9 buttons in 3 rows of 3 for the game. And that is what gets returned back here to main view on button board. Oops, sorry. So right here where I say button board, the button board is the 9 buttons to play the game with. So to review, my main view now has H1, where it just says tic-tac-toe at the top to give you a title. And then it has turn, which is going to be the variable we update to say whose turn it is. And then it has button board, which is the 9 buttons to make the actual game board. So that should be all we need. What I'm going to do next is kick this over here, and I'm going to do a run. And momentarily, look at this. We have an error. What did I miss? This looks like a syntax error. Do I have anything highlighted in here that doesn't like me? Let's see what the problems say. There's the one. So what did I do wrong? This is not a semicolon, it's expecting a comma. I knew better and I did it wrong anyway. Isn't that nice? All right, and it looks like I've got another one. Similar thing here, line 44. Oh, I left off a semicolon there. And then I don't know what that was doing. Okay, there we go. Now, we're going to come back to the terminal. And we will rerun. And here's my tic-tac-toe board. So now just real quick, we'll play the quick game so you can see. Click a button to play an X. And we always start in the middle, right? Because that's where you should start. and it automatically changes to click a button to play an O, and now I have to figure out where I'm going to put the O. Well, if somebody else plays the middle, you always play a corner, I think is the rule. But let's just kind of play this out. So I'm going to pick there, and oh, now they've got two, so I need to block it. So now X is looking and says, well, the next move I can make is probably here. And O says, I wanted to go there because I wasn't watching what I was doing. And now X goes here, and you'll see down here at the bottom is where we get the game is over, X wins message. So that's how the game works. And then, of course, you can refresh, and it starts over and clears everything out. So now you've seen Tic-Tac-Toe implemented in Vaadin. This was a really quick example. It doesn't show you a whole lot of the capabilities of Vaadin, but it's enough to understand that I did all of that in one little Java class, that I didn't have to go skip over and figure out jQuery things for. I didn't have to go figure out if I was going to use whatever the new JavaScript framework of the month is. They seem to be changing about that often. I don't have to do all that extra. I can stay in the language that I'm comfortable with. I can just keep writing Java, and I'll be able to control it. Now, an interesting thing that you might see here on the Vaadin website, we can go look in the documentation and see just how many components they have. So if you go down this list, there's a ton of stuff, and you'll see these ones that have the little purple icon are in the premium package, so you would have to actually buy a license or a membership, or I forget exactly how it works. We can look at the pricing in a moment. But you pay extra to get into those. The free package contains app layouts and avatars and badges and buttons and checkboxes and combo boxes and all the normal things you would expect. There are a few really special ones. The map one I think would be really interesting to play with. It actually uses like a physical map, geolocation kind of tool. I think that would be delightful to go play with in code. But all the basic things that you can do, if you need to password field something and not actually display the password on the screen as it's typed, the password field is pre-made. Side navigation, split layouts, text areas, all the things that you need in order to make the typical application. It's right there and ready to go. So I think that's something that's really special, that this is all available to a Java programmer now without having to learn a second language. And as much fun as it is to learn languages, and I try to do as much as I can with it, sometimes you just rather get things done than go tool around in a new language that you're not familiar with. So if I can stay in Java, it makes me more efficient because I can actually get the work done as opposed to having to figure out how to translate again. So that's Vaadin in a nutshell. It's a quick tour to get a taste for what it's possible to do. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope you've maybe seen something that you want to go try out yourself. Go check out the quick start on Vaadin.com and see if you can start to build something yourself. I would love to see in the comments if you want to send me a link to your thing. Let's share some code. Let's talk about it, and we can maybe approve each other's PRs. I think that would be fun. So this has been yet another adventure of Blink. I hope you've had a great time, and I can't wait to see what it is that you go and build with this. See you next time.